The truth is, my daughter did not cut me off all at once. She turned the whole family against me first. By the time I understood what was happening, the silence had already settled in. Heavy and complete. 13 years would pass before anyone knocked on my door again. And by then, I would be living a life none of them helped me build. My name is Maribel Rowan. I am 64. At the beginning, it felt temporary, a missed call here. A reply that came days later instead of minutes. I told myself people were busy. Families go through phases. I kept leaving voicemails that sounded cheerful enough, careful not to sound like someone asking for reassurance. Then the invitations stopped. I found out about my niece's graduation from a neighbor who congratulated me in the grocery store. She assumed I had been there. I nodded, smiled, and stood in the canned goods aisle longer than necessary, waiting for the tightness in my chest to ease. Later that week, I saw photos online. Everyone was there. My daughter stood in the middle, her arm around my sister, both of them smiling like nothing was missing. I did not call to ask why I had not been invited. I already knew the answer would not be honest. Whatever my daughter had said, it had been enough. Enough for my mother to stop calling. Enough for my brother to stop replying. Enough for the family to move forward as if I had stepped out of frame. There was no argument to replay, no last conversation to hold on to. Just a quiet understanding that I had been removed. Not in anger, in agreement. That was when I started looking backward. Not for answers, but for patterns. I didn't understand the pattern when it started. I was still telling myself it was normal, that children lean hard and parents adjust. It took years before I realized the house didn't just adjust to my daughter. It rearranged itself around her. "Mom, you're overreacting." She said the first time I asked her to explain something she'd told the family about me, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. I was just being honest. Honest meant emotional. Emotional meant unquestioned. If she cried, my sister stepped in. She's sensitive. You have to be careful with her. If she snapped, my mother sighed. She's under a lot of pressure. Don't push. When I tried to respond, the room went still, waiting for me to say it the right way. I learned to soften everything before it left my mouth. I didn't mean it like that. I'd say, even when I had, "It's fine." I'd add, when it wasn't. Once, after she stormed out of a dinner I'd cooked, my brother leaned across the table and said quietly, "You know how she gets. You should have let it go." I nodded. I always nodded. It felt easier than explaining how tired I was of being the one who had to bend. Over time, her moods became instructions. Plans changed to suit her. Conversations ended when she felt overwhelmed, and when she felt hurt. There was always an audience ready to protect her from whatever version of me she had described. I told myself it was my job to absorb it, that being her mother meant being the steady one, the quiet one. I believed that if I stayed calm long enough, things would balance out. They didn't. They tilted further, until silence became the safest place for me to stand. I saw it late at night, scrolling without thinking. A post from my daughter. No names, no details, just enough feeling to draw blood. I never thought the person who was supposed to protect me would be the one who hurt me the most. That was it. No explanation, no timeline. The comments filled in the rest for her. My sister replied first. "You don't deserve this." "I'm so sorry," my cousin added. Some people should never have been parents. An aunt I hadn't spoken to in years wrote, "We believe you." By morning, my phone was full. "What did you do to her?" "You need to apologize. She's been through enough. No one asked what happened. No one asked me." I called my sister. She answered on the third ring, her voice already tight. "She's hurting." She said, "I don't know what she told you," I said, "but it's not." "It doesn't matter," she cut in. "You need to make this right." "Make what right?" She didn't wait for me to finish the thought. You always push too hard, she continued. You always have. I called my mother next. She didn't answer. I left a message I rewrote 3 times before sending. Each version softer than the last. She never called back. That afternoon, my brother texted, "Just say sorry, even if you don't mean it." I stared at the screen. Sorry for what? For a conversation I didn't remember having. For a tone someone else decided I used. For a version of myself that only existed in her telling. I typed, then erased, typed again. Every sentence sounded like an admission to something I hadn't done. By evening, the tone changed. Less advice, more distance. We need space. She needs peace, right now. It's better if you step back. Step back where? The story moved fast after that. Faster than truth ever does. And in every version, I was already guilty, not because of proof, because the room had learned, over years, to lean toward her voice and away from mine. By the end of the week, the silence wasn't accidental anymore. It was agreed upon. The first holiday I waited, I kept my phone beside me all morning. Volume up, screen face up on the table. When it didn't ring, I told myself it was still early. By afternoon, I started rehearsing what I'd say when it finally did. By night, I turned the phone face down so I wouldn't have to watch it stay silent. The next holiday, I waited less. I cooked a smaller meal. I told myself it was just a day. By the 3rd year, I stopped expecting anything at all. Once, in the 5th year, I ended up in the emergency room with chest pain that turned out to be a severe panic attack. A nurse asked, "Who should we call?" I gave her my own number by mistake. She paused, then asked again, more gently. I shook my head. "There isn't anyone." She nodded like she'd heard that answer before. A few years later, a co-worker showed me photos on her phone during a slow shift. My family's reunion, she said, swiping. Then she frowned. "Oh, sorry. Too much." I smiled and said, "It's fine. I always said it was fine." That night, curiosity got the better of me. I looked them up. There they were. My mother, my siblings, my daughter, grouped close together, arms linked. Someone had captioned it. Our family. Another photo followed. 13 years without drama. Finally, healing. Healing from what? I didn't know. From me, apparently. I didn't comment. I didn't message anyone to remind them I was still alive. I sat with the phone in my hand until the screen dimmed. Then I set it down and went to bed like nothing had happened. The years stacked quietly after that. Birthdays passed. Names I used to say daily became names I stopped saying at all. When people asked if I had children, I said, "I have a daughter," and left it there. No explanation invited fewer questions. At some point, the waiting disappeared entirely. I stopped checking, stopped hoping. The silence didn't feel sharp anymore. It felt settled, like something that had always been there. I understood then that I hadn't been forgotten. I had been replaced. And once that realization took hold, something in me finally let go. The kitchen manager showed me the space at midnight. He didn't ask why I needed the hours no one wanted. "You clean everything yourself," he said, handing me a key. "If something breaks, you tell me. I will." I said. It felt important to answer clearly. The first night, I baked 3 trays. That was all I could afford in ingredients. I labeled each box by hand, writing the date, the cost, the number of hours it took. I didn't rush. I didn't guess. Guessing had never worked well for me. A delivery driver stopped by near closing. He watched me seal a box. "You running a business out of here?" he asked. "I'm trying," I said. He nodded once. "Start small. That's smarter." The orders came slowly. A woman from an office nearby asked for 24 bars for a meeting. When she picked them up, she counted the boxes twice. "These are neat," she said. I like that. I'll have them ready at the same time next week. I told her. She smiled. Then I'll be back. I wrote that down too. Some nights. The silence pressed in the way it used to during holidays. When that happened, I focused on measurements, flour, time, temperature, things that behaved the same way every time if you respected them. One night, a college student renting the next shift watched me pack up. "You're always so organized," she said. "Doesn't it get lonely? It gets quiet." I said, "There's a difference." She didn't argue. No one clapped when I paid my first month of kitchen rent without stress. No one congratulated me when the notebook filled halfway. But for the first time in years, I trusted the ground under my feet. Not because someone stood there with me, but because I could see every step I'd taken to get there. The woman from the office stopped calling her orders small. She slid a printed list across the counter and said, "We'll need this every Monday." I read it once. Then again, "I can do it," I said, careful not to promise more than I could hold. She studied me. Same quality, same timing. "Yes," I said. This time, I didn't soften it. Word moved the way it always does when something works. Quietly, a cafe manager came by after hours and tasted one bar, then another. He wiped his hands on a napkin and said, "Can you handle 3 locations?" "I can," I said, and meant it. The first contract came by email. No compliments. Just numbers, delivery times, expectations. I printed it and read every line twice before signing. When I finished, I sat at the metal table longer than necessary, letting the feelings settle. Not excitement, stability. I hired help when my hands couldn't keep up. Her name was Elena, a college student who spoke carefully and showed up early. "I don't need much," she said on the first night. "Just clear instructions." "You'll get them," I said. She followed the system without questioning it. When something went wrong, she waited instead of guessing. "Should I redo this batch?" she asked once, holding up a tray. "Yes," I said. "Thank you for stopping." She nodded. Like that mattered. The nights changed after that. Less panic, more rhythm, the notebook thickened. Costs balanced out. For the first time, exhaustion didn't feel like punishment. It felt like evidence. One evening, Elena looked around the stacked boxes and said, "You built all this yourself?" I corrected her without thinking. "I built it carefully." She smiled. "That's better. I didn't tell anyone else. Not a friend. Not a neighbor." Silence had taken enough from me. I wasn't handing it anything new, but something shifted all the same. I stopped bracing for collapse. I stopped assuming the floor would give way if I leaned too hard. The work held. And because it did, so did I. The realtor kept calling it an opportunity. She talked about space, value, long-term return. I listened, but those weren't the words that mattered to me. "Is it quiet?" I asked. She paused, then smiled. "Yes, very." That was enough. I didn't buy the house to impress anyone. I bought it because the doors locked the way I needed them to, because the rooms held their shape whether someone filled them or not. Because for the first time, the silence belonged to me. At the closing table, the woman across from me slid the papers forward. "Congratulations," she said. "You did this on your own." "I know," I replied. When the keys landed in my palm, they felt heavier than metal. They felt earned. A neighbor waved as I unlocked the door for the first time. "You throwing a housewarming no," I said. "I'm moving in." That was the celebration. I brought in one chair and a box of notebooks. I sat on the floor and wrote down the rules I hadn't known I was allowed to have. Who could enter? How much notice I needed? What silence meant to me now? I didn't call my family. I didn't post anything. There was nothing to explain. The house wasn't an announcement. It was a boundary. That night, I slept without bracing for interruption. No ringing phone. No voice asking me to adjust. The quiet held steady. By morning, the space felt settled, like it understood what kind of life it was meant to contain. The knock came the morning after I finished unpacking. Not tentative, not apologetic, firm, like someone who expected the door to open. I checked the camera out of habit. My daughter stood there with a suitcase, one hand on the handle, the other already reaching for her phone. She looked older, more certain, like someone arriving at a place she believed belonged to her. I opened the door, just enough to be seen. "Mom," she said, smiling like we'd spoken yesterday. "I'm moving in since you've got all this space now." I didn't step aside. She glanced past me, eyes moving quickly. "Wow, this is bigger than I thought. It's my house," I said. She laughed, light and dismissive. "That's what I mean. You don't need all of it." The words landed where 13 years used to be. "You didn't call?" I said. "I didn't think I had to." She replied, "We're family." Family. The word sat between us, unchanged, like it hadn't been used to close every door before this one. She shifted the suitcase forward an inch. "I just need a place for a while. Things are tight." "How long is a while?" I asked. She shrugged. "We'll see. You always land on your feet. You've got the business now, the house. You're fine, fine." As if that covered the nights I'd counted breaths to get through. As if silence hadn't been the price of survival. "You didn't come to talk," I said. "You came to settle in." Her smile thinned. "Why are you making this difficult?" I felt the old pull, the reflex to smooth things over. I let it pass. "You didn't ask where I was for 13 years, I said. "You didn't ask how I lived." She frowned, impatient. "That's in the past." "It is," I said, for me. Behind her, the suitcase tipped slightly, waiting for permission. I kept my hand on the door, not tense, steady. "Let me come in," she said. Voice sharpening. "We can talk inside." I looked at the threshold, at the space I'd learned to protect. I didn't move. "That's not how this works anymore," I said. I stepped back from the door and picked up the folder from the entry table. It wasn't thick, just clean, organized. Paper instead of memory. "What's that?" she asked, already irritated. "House rules," I said, "and boundaries." She scoffed. "You're serious." "I am." I opened it and placed it between us, holding it where she could see the first page. Guest policies. Notice requirements. No unannounced stays. Communication in writing only. "This is ridiculous," she said. "We don't need paperwork. I'm your daughter. You're a guest." I replied. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Her eyes flicked over the page. "So you're really doing this?" "I already did," I said. She leaned closer, lowering her voice like she was sharing something private. "Everyone says you've changed." I stopped explaining myself. I said, "That's all." She straightened. "You're punishing me." "I'm protecting myself." The words settled. She waited for more. For the story she could argue with. For the version of me that filled silence with apologies. I gave her none. "So what?" she said. "You're going to shut me out now. I'm deciding who comes in," I said. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then back at me. "Mom, you don't have to be like this." I closed the folder and set it down. "This is how I stay like this." For a moment, something close to uncertainty crossed her face. It passed quickly. "You'll regret this," she said. I regretted not doing it sooner. I said. I stepped forward and placed my hand on the door, not to push her away, to end the exchange. She opened her mouth, then stopped. There was nothing left to negotiate, no emotion to redirect. I closed the door gently. No slam, no final word. Outside. The suitcase wheels scraped against the concrete as she shifted her weight. Inside. The house stayed quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't wait for permission. I leaned against the door for a breath longer than necessary, then walked back into the room. The folder rested where I'd left it, doing what it was meant to do, holding the line. 3 weeks passed before I heard from her again. Not a knock, an email. "I'll respect your rules," she wrote. "Can we talk?" I replied with a time and a boundary. 1 hour, no suitcases. Conversation only. She arrived exactly on time. No smile this time, no performance. We sat at the table with space between us. "I've found a place," she said. "A roommate situation. I'm glad." I said. She waited, like she expected more. When it didn't come, she filled the silence. "It's not easy. I know," I said. And I meant it. She looked around the room, then back at me. "You really won't bend on this." "I won't," I said. "I can love you without disappearing." She nodded once. It wasn't agreement. It was recognition. Our conversations stayed brief after that. Emails about logistics, occasional updates, no rewrites of the past, no demands for access. The rules held because I held them. Work continued the same way it always had. Orders went out. Elena asked for a full schedule during finals week. "I've got it," she said. "You taught me well." I smiled. "You did the work on a quiet evening." I sat at the table and opened the folder one last time. I didn't add anything. I didn't need to. The lesson was already there. Written without ink. Here's what I learned. And it took me a lifetime to learn it. Love that requires you to erase yourself isn't love. Peace isn't given back when you're quiet enough. It's built when you decide what you will and won't accept. I didn't win anything. I kept something. My life didn't expand when my daughter returned. It expanded when I stopped shrinking to make room for everyone else. If this story resonates with you, stay with me. Like the video. Leave a comment or subscribe. Your voice matters here. That night, I locked the door, turned off the light, and went to bed without checking my phone. The house stayed quiet. So did I.